Hobbs Shaw is the newest movie in the Fast and Furious franchise. Well, it's more of a spin-off to the Fast and Furious franchise, but as far as I know, it still exists in the franchise. It's still canon to it. You get the point. I've enjoyed the Fast and Furious movie for what it was, especially in recent years. The first 4 Fast and Furious movies all kind of follow the same, plot. You have these racers, you have these fast cars, there's something going on. It was all pretty much the same thing, but I feel like as the movies progressed, especially with Fast 5, I feel like at that point they started to do a little bit more with it. They made really great heist movies. They made some really fun action movies out of it. It didn't just become these racers with fast cars. It became more than that, and that's what I appreciated. That's why going into this movie, I was actually interested in seeing a spinoff over 2 characters that we have gotten in the recent movies that I've really liked. This movie essentially revolves around Luke Hobbs and Deckard Shaw, played by Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham. They've both been, doing their own thing, their own way. They're both spies, but they both have their different methods. I mean, when they find a bad guy, they'll both make threats, they'll both do what they have to do to get the information. They just kind of go about it a different way because they are different people with very different ideology. On one hand, you have Luke Hobbs, who worked in the CIA, who was very successful with that. On the other hand, you had Deckard Shaw, who at one point was a terrorist, so he maybe has more, I guess you could say, malicious, not really intent, but tactics to go about his work. But now it's reached a point that the 2 of them are forced to work together because Idris Elba's out there. He's this cyborg-enhanced black Superman, if you want to call him that, because that's what the movie calls him anyway. And he's planning on releasing this virus called Snowflake onto the world that's going to kill a whole bunch of people. And the Federation MI6 is like, our only chance is the 2 of you together. We need you to go and stop them. So first of all, get into what I really liked in this movie. Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham, they crushed it together in this movie. Both their characters were awesome. Their chemistry was really great. I really love seeing people who don't like each other be forced to work together, because these 2 really do not like each other. That's definitely what brings a lot of funny moments into this movie. Just seeing them banter back and forth, seeing them shit on one another, just the way they talk to each other. You can tell they really don't like each other, and you just embrace the awkward moments that occur because of it. Along the way in the movie, they have to go find Deckard Shaw's sister because she actually had work on the virus with Idris Elba. She realized what its intent was, so she injected herself with it, so to serve as like a carrier for the virus. Eventually though, if they don't get that out of her and destroy the virus, she's gonna die, but Idris Elba, he's got himself and his crew coming after her because they want to get the virus for their intent. I would say, as far as Shaw's sister goes as a character, I liked her. I thought she was fine, She provided some good banter between the 2 of them. She kind of served as this good third wheel, kind of like the mediator between the 2 of them. But what I did really appreciate is the movie does try to bring it off like there's a romance developing between Hobbs and her. I didn't really buy the romance in this movie. I mean, they had a few conversations together, and you feel like the movie just wanted to make a romance happen just so Shaw and Hobbs could have another reason to be at odds with each other. I wish I bought the romance a little bit more, but that didn't really work for me. One thing that definitely did work for me in this movie, though, was Idris Elba as the villain. Idris Elba is one of those actors you can always count on to give a good performance in a movie. He does a great job here as the villain, and the guy is an absolute badass. As I mentioned earlier, he's basically this human being who has kind of been remodeled, rebooted with a lot of machinery in his system, which has, in a way, made him superhuman. Again, it's something that I have kind of appreciated with the Fast and Furious movies a little bit, is how, as these movies have gone along, they've gotten a little bit more unrealistic. And I appreciate that as an action movie. They were like, in this one, we're just gonna straight up have Idris Elba and we're gonna make him a cyborg that's just impervious to everything. But what's really cool is just seeing how he is programmed as a cyborg. I mean, he can pinpoint whenever someone's coming at him. He can pinpoint the likelihood that they're gonna fight him. He kind of sees everything in slow motion, so it makes it easy for him to fight somebody because he sees it coming. And Idris Elba is just very good at delivering dialogue, so when you hear him give these speeches and these monologues about what he intends to do with the virus, how he wants to wipe out the world to create like a new era of cyborgs among the earth, you buy into it. He sucks you in. He hooks you with it. I'll say this much. The action in this movie is a lot of fun, just as it has been in the previous Fast and Furious movies. The fight scenes, the chase scenes, some of the infiltration that Hobbs and Shaw have to do, and the bad guys they gotta get across. it's a really good time. It's a lot of fun. I will say, one thing that did disappoint me a little bit is there's not a whole lot of vehicular action in this movie as there has been in the Fast and Furious movies. To a degree, I mean, I guess you could say in the Fast and Furious movies you have to have that because it's about cars, it's about these racers. In this one, it's about Hobbs and Shaw. So, in a way, I guess they wanted to stray away from that a little bit. You did get a few scenes here and there of, you know, Idris Elba on a motorcycle going after them, but that's really it. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more about what we're used to seeing from the Fast and Furious movies, so that was a bit of a disappointment for me. I'll say this much right now. As I mentioned earlier, this movie does take a bit of the unbelievable route. It's like, hey, we're gonna make Idris Elba turn him into this cyborg that basically answers to this supercomputer villain that's above him, that's kind of running this whole thing. We don't really know who it is that's running it, we just know it's a supercomputer. And, you know, you're just gonna have to roll with it. It's not just that, it's various action scenes in particular. It's some of the conveniences that happen in this movie, like, you know, Dwayne Johnson just jumping out of the building, able to slide down this cable effortlessly, or a lot of the bad guys' guns being wired to, like, this electronic machine where it's like you shut that down, you can't use their guns. But as a result of that, you do have to suspend your disbelief. And I was able to do that. I could suspend my disbelief, I looked past the conveniences, and I was able to have fun with this movie. If you can do that, you'll enjoy it too. If you can't, you won't enjoy it. But I think for me, what did work, and the reason I was able to suspend my disbelief, is because the action scenes were undeniably a really good time. Like, I'll bring up another movie that featured Jason Statham, which I hated, Mechanic Resurrection. I despised this movie because everything about it was completely unbelievable. There were so many conveniences. But really, above all that, none of the action scenes were fun. There was nothing in this movie that was really enjoyable. Like, if you want me to suspend my disbelief, that's totally fine, but at least make the action fun, at least make it worthwhile. This movie did that. This movie did what that piece of shit failed to do. So props to you, Hobbs and Shaw. I'll say the climax of this movie is really a good time. They go to Samoa, which is where Luke Hobbs is from. They reunite with his family. They use his brother, who's this genius mechanic. He's able to get the virus out of Shaw's sister. And they know Idris Elba and his group of terrorists are coming after them. So what do they have to do? It's like, we're gonna have to fight them, but we're gonna make them fight on our terms. So, you know, you have Hobbs and his family and all these Samoans all together, just with all their staffs and their spears, ready to go old school with these guys. You know, they've got a bunch of explosions rigged everywhere. It turns into a really awesome, really fun, exciting action scene. There's one scene later on, you might have seen it in the trailer. It's the moment where Idris Elba's coming after them in the chopper, and, you know, they're trying to get away while in this, like, tractor trailer. Wait, tractor trailer is not the word. This truck trailer. I don't know the word for vehicle. Shut the fuck up. Point is, they're on it, and, you know, the helicopter's chained to them, and at one point, The Rock kind of has to, at one point, just, like, hold onto the chain and, like, re-hook it to the truck. It happens very quickly and very briefly. It's not like he's holding onto it for, like, 5 minutes like the trailer suggested he would. But again, that's one of those moments where it's like, alright, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief. You're just like, you know what? It was The Rock who did it, who's like the most jacked human being on earth, so you know what? Whatever. After they get the virus out of Shaw's sister, Hobbs and Shaw now have to go toe-to-toe with Idris Elba. And what I like seeing here is you feel like they finally figured out how to work together. During the fight, they realize, okay, Idris Elba can pinpoint each of our attacks one-on-one, but if one of us takes a punch from Idris Elba, just takes a hit, the other one could go in and strike him. He's not going to be able to track us both. Eventually, we can beat him that way. We can overwhelm him. And through working together, through that teamwork, they're able to defeat Idris Elba, but it's also at this point, his supercomputer that's been running him, or whoever's behind that, decides, alright, you're useless to me. He and the supercomputer, I can't say it's a he, maybe it's not even a he, I don't know. The supercomputer, it basically shuts down Idris Elba remotely, and it kills him that way. It really does have me wondering if the supercomputer terrorist that's kind of behind this whole thing, if that's going to play a role in future Fast and Furious movies. It definitely could be interesting. We haven't really seen that be a threat to the Fast and Furious crew yet. Could be interesting. So all in all, Hobbs and Shaw was exactly what I expected it to be. It was a fun, enjoyable action movie. Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham, they kill it together. I loved their chemistry. I loved seeing how they learned to work together. Idris Elba was a very solid villain. I liked seeing what he was as a character, what he was capable of doing. The action, although some of it is not as believable, and maybe not quite like you remember it being in Fast and Furious movies, is still very enjoyable. It's definitely a good time if you can suspend your disbelief for some parts. We had some very solid cameos too. We had Ryan Reynolds, Kevin Hart, they showed up in the movie at one point. The moments with them definitely brought some comedy. And in the end, I just went into this movie hoping to have a good time. I walked out of it saying, that was a good time. That's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe. I will see you all next time.